Thanks, everyone. I see the room's filling up here. So I'm Dave with iHemp Michigan. I'm here with Blaine Bechtold and Mike Brennan. We're hosting a weekly iHemp hour, to cover relevant topics. Last week, we talked about the financial aid packages available to farmers. This week, we have a couple experts, when it comes to getting your plant started, seed germination and seedlings. And one of the things, as we were getting started, we were talking about growing this year. We do have, I've talked to a number of growers who are new to it this year. Many who grew last year did get a bit of a bloody nose, and some of them have scaled down or stopped that process. But I just really want to make the emphasis that this year is our last year to really have the opportunity to do a lot of testing without as much risk. So come November of 2020, we're in the USDA plans, and it's a whole different situation. So I really encourage everyone to try out a few genetics and get their hands dirty with growing some crops this year, because this is a research year again, and this is an opportunity available to us. So I'd like to see everyone growing. We're talking to about a number of farmers that are growing fiber. This year is a trial. We don't have the processing for the fiber yet, but all this is coming. So with that, first I'd like to introduce Jen Nelson from Mid-Michigan Hemp Supply. Jen,
hey everyone.
You're in Midland?
Yeah, I'm in Midland today, yep.
So greenhouses in Midland and a store in Midland. You sell CBD products and such in Midland?
Yep, we have 150,000 square foot of growing space up here in 20 greenhouses. And then we also have a retail store where we sell our CBD products.
All right, so tell us about your propagation plans and seedlings and how that's going.
Well, it's been up and down. The first year, has been really hard. We've gotten a couple batches of seeds that were mostly male and culling the field. It's just been really hard. So we've been trying to we're adamant about only getting feminized seeds. But with a lot of work, we're able to identify the phenotypes that are good and excel among the other phenotypes. We're able to identify which plants are stronger. So that's a plus of propagating, that we do have a lot of control in the beginning of its life, and we do learn a lot. So we propagate anywhere from, I'd say, for other people, other farms, we propagate anywhere from 100 seeds to a couple thousand for them. And we give them back to them when they're about, 2 inches tall seedling. They have a little bit of a root established. We have seed trays that come in 500. So that's really nice when we have a big order. How else can I elaborate? I do better with questions and responses.
Yeah, and if you're not one of the presenters, if you could go ahead and mute yourself until you have a question, I'd appreciate it, so we don't have any extra background noise. So show off your seedlings you have there.
Dave, we should tell everybody about the chat, how to send questions in.
Oh, and then there's a chat. Yeah, Mary is asking, can I mute all attendees? I could, but then they couldn't ask any questions. So we want this to be interactive and as smooth as possible. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Jen.
That's okay, that's okay. All right, so here we have Sweet Caroline. This is a CBD strain. This is supposed to be 100% feminized, told to be about 90% germination. A lot of times I'm really seeing closer to like 78% germination. But we've learned with seeds that we have to find out truly on our own. So we propagated these. These are about 2 weeks into their life. When we're testing things like this, we'll grow them up and we'll flip them kind of quick. We don't let them get, 6 feet tall like we do a lot of our mother plants or our bloom plants, but we'll kind of get them about 36 inches tall, a bunch of nodes on them, flip them into bloom, see what quality they are. We're checking daily for males. I've had to pick a lot of males out of my CVG, in my opinion.
So when you say you flip them into bloom, are you doing light deprivation or how are you doing that?
We're just putting them in our bloom house. I forget the schedule that it's on, but I believe it's 12 and 18, right, guys? 12 and 18, 12, 12, keeps them veg. Anyone give me a nod there? Yeah, 12, 18. So in our bloom, I could always check the timer for you, but we just put them, we have a whole house where the light cycle is set for bloom. So when I'm ready to bloom something, I just kind of take it over to the bloom house and let it bloom.
All right. And we have Eric Kaitzer from Keitzer Farms. Eric, what do you have behind you there?
This is I'm in a greenhouse right now with pepper plants, about 8,000 trays here, probably, oh boy, a couple million plants.
Yeah.
They're for pepper growers in Michigan and Indiana.
Okay. And we were talking earlier, are you doing some seed germination this year?
Yeah. Well, so our operation, we're kind of a commercially sized propagator. So most of our customers are, 10 acres or more in production. And we're predominantly vegetable and tobacco, but last year we did about 1 million hemp plants. And we're on a custom contract basis, so we don't spec any plants. The growers come to us directly and we just charge a growing fee. They provide us with the genetics that they want to use. And we just get their plants ready for them.
Okay.
Eric and Jen, maybe both of you, are you having any issues with the governor's order on selling plants at this point? Or is that not a problem for you guys?
No, it's not affecting us. We have a lot of questions in gray area, but we're still taking our orders. And, planting season really isn't out for a little bit. So having multiple greenhouses, we can still function with our essential employees, like one person to a greenhouse right now. So I think we're still booming. Going good. How about you?
Yeah, we're essential. I would, we're 98% vegetables. So I would say that, yeah, we can't stop. I got 80 people right now. And it's just one of these things where the country needs to eat, so we're working.
Same with us too. We sell vegetables and herbs here as well, and we've got probably 100,000, couple 100,000 seedlings propagated of tomatoes and peppers, and we feel real passionate about keeping that outlet going for our communities.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We all need to eat.
Yeah. The only issues that I'm seeing with the shutdown is just availability of certain items. Like I was saying before, the meeting started, that like personal protection equipment for pesticide applicators and stuff like that it's in tough supply. The back orders are like 2 months right now on a lot of that.
Yeah, and also I could point out is, with technology, it's been really helpful because I can meet up with my clients via Zoom. I can do phone meetings. We can, do credit card transactions and stuff. So a lot of our April business, as far as hemp farms and other farming that we're doing in our greenhouses, we can still operate high potential.
Good.
I was wondering if we could maybe talk a little bit about, assuming that there's folks out there that may be first-time hemp farmers, what they need to be dealing with right now. And I know we talked about this before we started with seed selection. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Everyone last year with their first year was a learning curve, especially for us too, because it was the first time that we raised seedlings for hemp. And, you got to learn from every lesson every year, to get better. And seed selection was a major challenge. I think, a lot of people, especially in the Midwest, wanted to get into hemp but the seed supply wasn't quite there. So if you wanted to grow last year, your options were relatively limited. So there was a lot of, I would say, not very good seed out there.
Mhm.
And so it's really important that you vet your seed supplier or your genetic supplier if you're getting clones, and just really make sure that you're getting what you're buying.
Do you have any recommendations for suppliers that people could go to that you've used that you would consider really good?
I guess it all depends on your goals. There's companies out there where they're doing what I think are the right things, which is they're getting COAs on all their seeds. They're doing grow outs. They're not releasing seeds in the first year. They're doing hybrid crosses. So a lot of them are just like the big names that people hear, like Jupiter Seed, Oregon CBD, HGH, Davis Seed. Just are a few of the names of companies that are, what I would think that what I take for granted in the vegetable side, that they're doing good practices in their breeding and their seed production. And their seed sorting, they're making sure that the best quality seed is there. A lot of the germination rates last year that were poor, I think, was because the seeds weren't properly sorted.
Mhm.
And so, if they didn't put seeds through a gravity table, so that, the bad seed wasn't getting pulled out with the good seed. And so, but I think this year it's not going to be a problem. I think there's an oversupply issue this year. So seed availability, I don't think is going to be a problem this year.
Can you talk about identifying seeds? I wish we had some graphics. I might be able to pull some up, but when you look at a seed, you have show and tell for us? Can you identify, there's, I was on a webinar yesterday and they were talking about which way you should plant the seed down ideally. At your scale, Eric, you don't have that luxury, but if you're doing small plantings, you can put the point down, right? And the eye up. Is that correct?
I think, in my opinion, the seed's going to knows where up is. So no matter which way you put it in there, it's going to find it's going to look for light. It's not going to travel downward where there's no light. It's going to try to reach up towards light.
Okay. And
so the only time you'd have an issue with your plant not emerging properly is because you kept it in the dark too long.
Okay.
So if you're pre-germing plants in like a germ chamber or a germ room, you didn't get them out soon enough. So, really, like if you're pre-germing plants, it should be, no more than 24 hours and they need to be out in the sun.
Okay. And then pre-germing is, can you describe that process?
The germination is 3 processes. It's when your radical emerges from the seed. So that's when that first little tail comes out of the seed. And then the soil emergence, and then your cotyledon's expansion. And so those are the 3 steps. Well, pre-germ is when you take your seedlings and you put them in a controlled environment room or a dark room that has high humidity and a stable temperature. And you're doing just about the first 2 steps of that germination process, where you're letting the radical come out, and then you're leaving them in that room, not till they emerge from the soil, but just before they emerge from the soil. And that gives the seed the opportunity, if you have some that are, has a little bit less vigor than other plants, it gives them all the opportunity to germinate. So it's a process that somebody like at our scale we use because it maximizes the success of the seeds that you have.
Okay.
It's not necessarily something that is, you need to do, but if you have the ability to do it, it'll help your germination process.
Mm-hmm. What kind of germination process are you using, Jen? Am I muted?
Was that a question for me?
It was.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. They just turned on the trimmer. We're harvesting right now today. And is that a background noise? Can you guys hear the hum too bad?
No.
Okay, so I was just listening to my team sort the trimmer out. Sounded like they had technical difficulties. What was the question again, Dave?
With your germination process, you talked about using a cloth or something until they pop.
Yeah, he did a great job. Eric, you described it perfectly. You used the words that I probably couldn't find. But pre-germination is the same thing. And a little, in a cloth. It's a white cloth. And dark and moist. And within 24 hours, we get it into light. I agree with everything that Eric said. You described it perfectly. Way better than I could, Eric. Good job. I concur.
Okay.
Do you have any recommendations on seed suppliers out there, or ones that you've been real happy with?
There's been a couple, last year that vapored on us. That was really unfortunate that we would buy seeds, and I'd go to contact the company and they disappeared. So that didn't go great. HGH is great. Sometimes some of the farmers struggle with the minimum order quantity. So, I found that kind of hard to deal with. We've bought from Hemp Logic before. Right now, we're trying to source some more CBG seeds, but again, they're inconsistent so far. But HGH is a good one. Hemp Logic. We have seeds that last year they got through light deprivation. That Toni, the owner of Mid-Michigan Hemp Supply, my boss, he does all that stuff for us. But we still have seed, and we've gotten great reports on our seed too. So we don't specialize in seeds. We prefer to stick to cloning. We have about 3,500 hemp moms on our greenhouse property right now, which mainly were achieved through cloning, the cloning process.
Okay. That would be a fun show and tell to teach how to clone.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
All right.
Clone masters over here.
Okay. That could be for a future. Looking at the chat room, if anyone has questions, you can put it in chat, and we'll put that up. Lori had asked about yellowing of plants. Could you talk about some of the conditions when the leaves start to turn yellow?
With yellowing of plants, it can be one of two things. Most likely, it's a nutrition problem, but it can also go the other way. Sometimes, when you see where your new nodes are emerging and that they're yellower than the rest of the plant, sometimes that indicates that you've had too much fertilizer on your seedlings. In the early stages of the plant, if you see that the cotyledons is yellowing over the true leads, that's a surefire indication that you're having a nutrition problem.
Okay. I see another question where Nancy's asking about germination. Jen's using a white cloth. Eric, you have a different, it's two different processes based on the scale. Eric, are you putting them right into the trays to do the germination?
Yeah, I mean, I'm out and about, so I can walk over there. I can show you guys what it is. No, we use actual rooms. So our rooms are dark rooms, and they've got in-floor heating. And we stack the trays about 8 feet high in these germination boxes, and we leave them in the room for their designated amount of time before we take them out to the greenhouse.
So are the seeds actually? You have a machine that puts them in the trays, right? So
Yep.
The machines are in the soil during the germination phase.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, oh yeah, they're definitely in the tray. They've been pre-watered. We're putting, so like on a 72 count tray, we're putting about 14 ounces of water per tray to make sure that they're not too wet. You don't want them too wet in the germination process because you can drown out the plants. So that's really important in the germination process, that you waterlog your tray that you're growing the plants in.
Okay.
But
while you're heading over there, Eric, I see Eric Anderson chimed in regards to the vegetables and such. And I've seen this question a lot. You know, and I haven't dug into it specifically, but from what I've seen reposted, if a vegetable stand is under 50,000 square feet and you have less than 25% of your capacity, that you can be open to sell vegetables. That was my understanding. If anyone can provide more specific information, but I mean, it's ridiculous. We have to figure out some way to get our gardens in and to, you know, maintain our food supply. You know, it's just, I don't understand how that can't be essential. So.
I haven't heard any specifics on, business size and how to remain open. We're constantly trying to stay up to date on those orders, as far as any of our greenhouse operations. So I don't really know, but that's interesting, Dave, that you brought up, the size and employee capacity. I'm going to look more into that again.
Yeah, like if you're not the employee capacity, it's like if you have, like a restaurant has X amount of seating, so you have a certain amount of capacity by the fire marshal, you have to have, you can't go over 25% of that capacity in your store, is my understanding. So, hey, Eric, you made it all the way to your veg room, right? Or your
our seed room. Yeah. So here's one of our boxes looks like, and they stack it all the way to the top. And one of these boxes will hold anywhere between 500 and 1,000 trays, and they'll just stack them on manageable stacks that people can move around. And then once they've been pre-watered, then they move into a germination. Where, for example, we keep them at 72 for 24 hours. These are just some of the ones we have in here right now. Keep the humidity really high.
Same physics are going on there.
Jen, how are the current conditions we have for the 6 foot spacing and all the other things they've got out there to be safe? How is that affecting your operations? The current rules of 6 foot spacing and hand washing and all that stuff. How is that affecting you guys? How is it affecting your business and operation? And what are you doing to try to meet that?
We're all really careful here, and we actually stay about 10 feet apart when in passing, but actually we're keeping people in separate greenhouses working at separate ends, and we have a specific employee designated just to clean up door handles and things we touch. So that's been really helpful, is the ability to kind of gear somebody to clean up. Most of our employees are all wearing masks. I say most because I'm not, but I'm by myself right now. So, I feel comfortable not wearing a mask. A lot of times we wear masks anyway here because we're dealing with so much soil and transplanting and stuff like that. We tend to wear masks and handkerchiefs a lot anyway. So as far as employees, we're doing a great job and we're touching base and we're keeping in contact as far as how is everyone feeling, anybody's symptoms, asking about their family. We're following a protocol. So it's not really affecting it there, but it does kind of affect, it's going to affect our shopping, our in-greenhouse shopping. We technically, with our annuals, perennials, and vegetables, people are used to, for the last 50 years, coming into the greenhouse and the ability to shop for that. So we're trying to coordinate an outdoor staging area and allow them to pay us through a window, was something a concept we had thought of. So it's not so much juggling our employees, it's more juggling the rush that we're going to get without breaking any rules. Scheduling deliveries is something we're kind of getting into to try to work around it. Eric, how are you guys doing it over there?
Well, we have certain jobs that 6 foot is not feasible. When we're moving trays in and out of the greenhouses, you got to be able to pass it to the person next to you. And so we probably have around 25 people that have to basically work in an environment where they're not doing the social distancing, but right now people are using cloth masks. We can't obviously get any of the real medical grade masks at this point. And then we're taking people's temperature when they come to work at the beginning of the day. And then we're just trying to be real open with all the employees and be like, hey, if you're not feeling sick, please don't come in. And we're trying to be a team and understand that's like, hey, even if you feel a little bit sick, don't come in.
Yeah, I agree. And I think
and we don't want to penalize them. So, we're for the first time ever, we're kind of just doing like paid leave just so like they don't feel like, well, I need to come in because I need the work. It's like, no, we don't. We have a bigger objective here. So, by keeping everybody safe by staying at home. But as of now, we've not had any issues like that yet. But, everyone kind of knows what our goals are. And so, and we've asked them to limit their exposure outside of work, so, don't do any, unnecessary, social interactions outside of work. But it's
same thing.
Just trying to get trust from your employees and everyone working as a team. It's real tough. I mean, everyone is definitely on edge this whole year. It's definitely much more stressful than it's ever been. People's, are a little bit pricklier than normal. So everyone has to make a greater effort to be nice and congenial with one another, just because there's that underlying stress level that everyone's carrying.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think I'd love to add that I think Eric and I and the businesses that we're running are really good examples of how we can do this and run our essential businesses like vegetables and hemp and CBD, and we're good examples of how we can do it without making people sick. I mean, we're both running businesses, and it's not that it's a bad thing, but if someone was, but nobody here has been sick. I mean, I think keeping our employees' trust, we've also started giving incentives so our employees don't feel pressure to come in, because I know that's one of the biggest struggles out there when someone does get sick. Prior to this pandemic, I'm not going to lie, not here at Mid-Michigan Hemp Supply, but in my lifetime of working, I've gone to work not feeling good because I felt pressure that I couldn't let my team down or that I needed the money. So I think us businesses like Eric and I, supporting our employees and showing a good example and not breaking that protocol is what's going to get us back and going.
I must say the social distancing is working out more than just the coronavirus, because we did some checking on our employees and we've had less sick days this year than we have in years past. So I think it's also keeping the flu out, and it's keeping other things, because like I said, in years past we would have times when there's a couple people that are coming to work and they're it's like, oh, I just got a little cold, I can fight through it, but I'm actually not even really seeing that. People are, I think the distancing is keeping them, everyone's washing their hands a lot more and being very conscious about what they're touching, or don't when they go to their break or lunchroom, to make sure that everyone washes their hands and not like going in and out. Everyone's a lot more conscious of being of making sure that they're being clean.
Yeah.
Can your people work with gloves on or not? Does that work for you?
So yeah, some do, some don't. I guess it depends on what your job is. Some machine operators, they don't need gloves. But generally, a lot of them wear gloves anyway, just because a lot of the seeds that we deal with, they have pesticides on them. So, it's not, they have to wear gloves anyway.
We wear a lot of gloves. Yeah, everybody pretty much wears gloves around here. More so right now because of the pandemic stuff going on. But we do a lot of harvesting and culling and manicuring our plants, and it gets so sticky. So we do use a lot of gloves here.
Now, Jen and Eric, you guys are dealing with the realities of how to do the social distancing and all the other stuff the governor has ordered. Now that you've gone through this, do you have any recommendations to give back to the governor about what is working, what's not working, what would be better, anything along those lines?
That's a good question. Can I go first, Eric, or are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, you get more time to think about it, darn it. If I was talking to the governor, something I could say is just take a look at us. We're functioning. We can do this. We're setting an example. I feel like as long as we've got, for now, if we've got the concerts and the ball games and the festivals at bay, I think we've got a great shot of opening good parts of our economy back up. And I would love for the governor to give us a chance and to trust us. You know, they say they have a lot of trust, and Michiganders have done a great job so far. Well, trust us. We can do this. We have all are walking away completely different mindset after this. So I think we're ready.
All right.
Well, I'm my challenges of the shutdown are really, I'm relatively unaffected by the governor's actions outside of just the general social distancing, just because we don't deal with a lot of retail, and most of our customers are commercial farmers. Our real challenge has been the side effects of the shutdown, where a lot of our customers, you know, they grow produce for food service, and so they've cut back a lot of orders. And just then a lot of them also use the H-2A program, where they're getting workers from Mexico or Guatemala or Jamaica, and they can't get their workers here. But that's more of a federal issue and less of a state issue.
Okay.
I'm going to dig up the specific rules. Toni had mentioned in the chat that, you know, he had read, similar thing about the size of the location and the need for hand washing stations. So I'll dig that up, the actual language, and send it out in an email.
It'll be interesting to see what the president comes out with today, I guess, to his guidelines for opening back up.
Yeah, that's right. That's coming this afternoon, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
So the next challenge you see for the growers after they take your plants and in order fashion to get them in, what do you see the next challenge for the growers are now after they get from plants from you and go to the field?
A challenge I see is a lot of farmers last year that only had agriculture experience with corn and soy didn't understand the grooming and the topping of the plant to get the biggest return on it. A lot of farmers thought just throw their seed in the ground or their clone and let it grow. And it grew into a big, tall, just stalk. So that's just one right off the bat where I find it's really important with all the contracts that we're working with, or anybody new that I talk to. You know, I'm trying to get them to create a plant that's like this, that has lots and lots and lots of nodes. I mean, we're gonna get colas for days off of that. Some of our plants produce upwards of 2.5 pounds of flour.
Wow.
So culling it, topping it is huge. Right now, you know, if you're going to use irrigation, I'm bidding a lot of irrigation contracts and helping farms set up their irrigation lines and how much drip line do they need to be. So, you know, besides grooming your plant, having your watering system down is huge. There's so many first things that people need to think about. It really just takes months, and maybe the biggest piece of advice I could give for the first timers after planting is just, I don't even know. There's so many, guys. There's so many. I think manicuring the plant was really important. If you're going to ask right after they get it in the ground, manicuring, taking care of it, feeding it.
So Jen, Eric, you probably know, but Jen, do you see the chat on the side? We've got a question from Mary. She'd like you to explain more about the process. When do you start culling, topping, at what stage?
All right, I have a couple examples. Let me grab them.
Okay. Wow, what a timely question. At the end of
Okay,
this, too,
just
folks,
in
I'm gonna
case
be-
I was asked. So we like to top at about this size. And right up here is a node. And I take that node while not disrupting the node on the left. There's a little one on the left and a little one on the right. And once I do that, this plant now will shoot off a branch this way and a branch this way. And then this will be the beginning base for the plant. And then we top it again. Once the branch is shot off, that will grow Y, and we top this, and we top this, so that will grow more. So I'll show you an example of one that this has been done to and has grown. So let me show you this.
All right, cool.
It's kind of it's in a big pot. Okay, so here we have one plant where the bottom, let's see if you can see, the bottom has been cleaned up real well. And because we did that node pinching up here, I don't know if you guys can see that good, it has split off to here and to here, two sides. So now when our plant grows up, it's going to have more return because we've got more nodes and more opportunities for this plant to produce clones or colas. So this is kind of what it looks like when done properly.
Very cool.
And there's the nodes again on this one where, let's see, yep, we probably would go ahead and take this node here soon, and it's going to grow a branch this way and this way. So if you can picture that plant, if nobody had topped that top node, this plant is just going to grow up with basically two stalks, and you're just not really going to get much of a return on it. I mean, this plant behind me, if I wanted to clone this right now, this is one of our Royal series. If I wanted to clone this, I could probably get 50 or 60 clones off of it. And that's simply because we groomed it from this age. So I think that's just really, really important, is starting to manicure your plants when they're younger. I know that's really hard if you have 5, 10, 20 acres. There are faster ways to do it that we can teach people, but I think it's crucial.
Let me also ask you, for first timers out there, what would be the ideal acreage for them to start with, since they don't really know the process and they're learning?
It's not really a one size fits all, you guys. I like to see when there's a farmer who has an acre to 5, and they team up with their grandson or their nephew or their middle-aged son, and he has the marijuana and the cannabis expertise, and the father or the uncle has the property and the agriculture expertise, because that makes a great combination. So let me set that down. So I think that's really helpful. I actually forgot the question.
Do you see a younger generation coming in, getting interested in farming with the?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I see the older generation that may have been getting burned out with the corn and the soy taking a chance, and having hope. And I'm really committed. I'm really close with 5 of our contracts right now, and I'm just really committed to them holding their hand. We have a couple that are more independent, and they have the marijuana grower and the agriculture expert that knows his soils and knows his irrigation. That's really good. But we also have a couple farms where it's a family, a husband, wife, and some teenagers or 20-year-olds, and they have zero hemp or marijuana experience. And that's where we're going to come in real strong and share that knowledge. We added up within Mid-Michigan Hemp Supply, if we combine our experience, there is 4 of us, key players, that bring the cannabis and hemp to the table knowledge. We have like 105 years of experience combined. So that brings a lot of knowledge. So we're able to help the growers that have only grown corn for the last 50 years transition over to hemp. So you have to have somebody who knows about hemp, because if you try to educate yourself online, in my opinion, and through expos, it would just take you a really long time to learn the cloning and the phenotyping and the hermaphrodite, and to learn about powdery mildew and aphids, yuck. So, you know, you just got to have somebody there that knows a lot about that to be successful.
We have a question about the difference between seedlings and clones. Can you talk about that, the cost difference? And, you know, the clones don't have that taproot, so in a windy situation, you wouldn't want to use clones, or how's that work?
Do you want to answer it, Eric, or?
I mean, I can. I think the taproot argument is and it's coming from somebody that only grows seedlings is a bit of a misnomer.
Okay.
I saw hundreds of acres in Kentucky from clones, and you know, they didn't have any issues with not having a tap root. I think it's a lot of that argument is more to do with, I think it's a seed salesman's kind of thing. Yes, there is a taproot issue, but I mean, if you cultivate your plant properly, it'll grow a robust enough root system where you won't have to worry about it falling over. Mm-hmm. But to me, I mean, if you want the nitty gritty difference, the difference is cost, you know, and what your objectives are. So, you know, if you're trying to grow 50 acres, the challenge of, you know, buying clones is it's a lot more expensive than going with a seedling. A seedling is dramatically less expensive, but they all have their own challenges. You know, when you go clones, you know what your output's going to be. So there's going to be one phenotype in your field, and that phenotype is going to produce the same across the board. And so that's a huge advantage, but at the same time, it's also a disadvantage, because if there's a susceptibility of that plant, your whole field has that entire susceptibility. So, you know, it's weighing your options and what your goals are as a grower, and, you know, what you're looking to do. You know, it's really a personal preference.
I agree.
Cost seedlings around $2, clone 5 to 7. Does that sound about right? Or
yeah,
seedling. Oh, I think this year you can get a 75-cent seedling.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, the seed prices are coming down really low. I mean, the dollar seed is a thing of the past.
Okay.
You know, I guess for me, I'm seeing a lot of scale purchasing. So, you know, like I've seen guys, you know, that are buying 1 million seeds, buying seeds for, you know, like 42 cents a piece.
Mm-hmm.
What's driving down the seed price? Just a lot of supply.
Overproduction. Yep. If you go out there, there's tons of seed companies now, you know, and they've all figured out how to feminize, and there's a lot of feminized seed out there, and there's a lot less acres. I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot less acres grown in the U.S. this year than there were last year. Well, last year there was an undersupply issue, and so all the seed companies bulked up, thinking we don't want that to happen. There was a lot of missed opportunity there. Well, they bulked up for a year that's going to be in contraction. So I think, you know, they're reducing their price to get sales, because it's such a competitive market right now.
Yeah, really competitive.
Okay. And the feminization, I've talked to some guys that have figured it out, and I don't know enough to talk about it. Is that a hard process to feminize seed?
I've personally not done it. I've seen people doing it with colloidal silver.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, in terms of having hands-on experience, I don't have any hands-on experience. So, you know, if you do, yeah, maybe you should answer the question, because I don't.
I have a little bit. Toni, the owner, handles a lot of the seed feminization and stuff like that. From what I see, yep, colloidal silver, but light deprivation. is what I understand, to get completely feminized, a certain schedule of light deprivation. I may be misspeaking, but I believe, that's what they're doing to get it. We've got pollen saved. We've got a base of pollen collected. And I know Toni's going to do some crossbreeding and feminizing with that, but I know it takes years. What we're doing with that now is general public won't see it for probably 2.5 years. So I don't have a lot of knowledge on feminization. I do know that it's just so important, though. It's so important.
I mean, I can give the general breakdown of how it works. It's you're taking female plants and you're putting them under a stress condition with a chemical substance. A lot of people use colloidal silver or gibberellic acid, and when doing that, you're basically forcing your female to herm out, and so it will create male pollen sacs. And then when you collect and pollinate your female plants, the rate of feminized seed produced is very high. I know that the guys that are getting like 1 to 4,000, like some really crazy feminization rates. There's also some, having certain crosses in your female and your male and your female lines that they'll produce, higher amounts of higher feminization rates. But in terms of that process, I'm not really familiar with, outside of just basically knowing how it works.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of watching
posed
it.
to me the other day about, can you sex seeds by X-ray? Someone thought they could do that, and I've never heard of it, but I just thought
not that I know of. I know there's an outfit in California advertising that they can offer you 100% male-free seedlings with using their patented blue light system, and honestly, it sounds like snake oil. So if there was some stuff like that, it'd be a lot more mainstream. I think it's just a part of the rumor mill.
One question Paula asked in the chat room was about why farmers dropped out this year, and I really feel that, like I talked at the very beginning, this is another research year for us, an opportunity to learn. Until the FDA comes out with definitive rules, we're not going to see large companies jumping into this. And we're just talking about CBD in particular. Well, and even fiber. The supply chain isn't built out yet. So we don't have a lot of buyers of oil. So we grow the hemp, and then we ended up with a bunch of oil to sell, So, some of us got adventurous and, made some salves and some tinctures. And this is a salve. And, are trying to, we're still working on 2019 harvest, so, those that are sitting on a bunch of oil because that's all that was available to them is a split, they're sitting on the oil trying to figure out what next,
People aren't buying CBD products as much as they were with the shutdown either. So I think there's just the oversupply that you're talking about, Dave, is just not getting depleted right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think at least in the larger growers that are going to try to target, more of like a box store markets and stuff like that, that they don't, there's just a lot of risk right now. And it's, they're thinking it might be better to sit out this year.
Mm-hmm. I see Matt's asking about processors. So Matt, if you give me a call or shoot me an email, I can connect you up. Or if you go to the business directory on iHempMichigan.com, you'll find some processors. He's saying they're not following up with him. I don't know what's going on there. Yeah.
I know that there's several major processors have stopped processing.
Yeah, they did.
As of late. And that's because that their oil's not moving, and the processors are, either they're getting paid by a toll or they're getting paid by a split. If they can't sell their oil, it costs them real money to run their processing facilities. So, if they can't move their oil, they can't pay their bills to keep processing. So
Yeah, we spoke to some gentlemen out of California a week ago that are looking at buying a big processing plant in Arizona and bringing it here to Michigan because the company in Arizona stepped in to the tune of like $40 million or something, and they stepped in too big, and the bank's calling their note. So it's a fire sale. So there's going to be some opportunities like that too, where properties pop up because people they weren't conservative enough in their projections. So tread carefully and be prepared to take it all the way to product, and connect up with us. We'll help you sell it if possible. Let's see.
Any other questions out there?
I'm going to show you guys one of our CBG auto flower grown from a seed plants too.
Ah.
All right, check it out. This is auto flower. This is as big as this plant's going to get.
Really?
Look at that. And that comes with trial and error. We wanted to try a strain, a seed from somebody, and CBG is so new. We bought this last year. It has auto flower traits in it. A lot of it does, and that's growing from seed. You kind of find those things out. So this sucker is about, from the day it was propagated, just a little tiny guy. This thing is fully, let me see the date. This thing is 4, 5. This is not even 6 weeks old.
Do you do the same topping to make it split? I don't see any splits in that.
Well, this one auto flowered so fast. This one started shooting pistils for its buds at about 2 weeks into its life. I mean, it was only about that tall when it started shooting pistils. But with keeping them under 24-hour light and spacing them out, I can show you what we were able to stop the auto flower on it, and I'll show you. And we did top the nodes there. So here, it's kind of bigger.
And I'll need you to explain shooting pistols too. Sounds like an 80 punk band.
So here is the same plant where we have found certain phenotypes. This is a pheno that doesn't carry such a strong auto flower in them. So we're holding on to this and we're cloning off of them. And here's our definite space right there. There's your one branch and your other. But personally, to me, this was done a little late. If this was a field plant, I feel like this would possibly tip over, because look how long and long and long and long and long, and then we don't split until up here.
Yeah.
So me personally would prefer to see that split, down here more so. But yeah, that's a good pheno there that has less auto flower in it, and we're real excited and we're cloning off of them. And that's with us. We go through the trials and tribulations in order to bring people the good genetics. We go through the heartache and the blunder, and I have possibly sweat blood up here. I am not kidding, and I've had tears, but my boss just keeps telling me we would do a great job, and that's what we're here for. We're here to test and trial and learn the genetics so that our farmers don't have to deal with that. So I try to keep my chin up when there's things that go awry.
Okay, excellent.
A little
About
different.
5 minutes or so left, Dave. Maybe there's some questions out there we can pick up.
Yeah,
There's one from Paul I was going to bring up here. Can someone explain the top reasons for failure last year causing many of last year's growers to drop out? I think the biggest reason why a lot of growers have dropped out of this is really because of the market. There was crop failure, and the situations too with people, but if there's not the market in the end of this, and you can't take the biomass somewhere and sell it, you've got to get it processed into this oil and then sell that oil or work with a processor. I think that's been one of the biggest reasons that a lot of people have dropped out of it for this year.
Mm-hmm.
But others may have other opinions.
That is it.
Everybody that we were supposed to work with, that's why they dropped out, is that they just uncertainty in the market and just the risk reward is not there. in their opinion, for their operations, they felt that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It was just a lot of ups and downs, and that I think a lot of it had to do with them taking the ruling different. The no delta 9 and the allowed THC. I think it just, until it gets itself figured out, I think a lot of people are afraid.
Tony's asking about the number of farmers licensed right now. I don't have an updated number from MDARD. In January, it was only around 150 that had renewed their license. Out of 550, only about 150 renewed. I'm thinking we're probably about half, of last year's. But some of those, there were some people that hit it out of the park too. So it's not all gloom and doom. Some people did really well, and they're doubling down this year, and they have contracts, they have relationships, they're dialing it in, and when, I just feel in my heart that once we get the supply chain worked out, that, there's going to be a real market here. But where iHemp is really focused on is developing that fiber market, because we see that as not only good for your economy, but good for the ecology. And we're making some strides in that area to bring that processing here into the Midwest, so we can start growing fiber at scale. And you'll be able to get more than corn or soybean, growing hemp. It's not going to be the big home run that is potential with the CBD or CBG. A lot of people are leaning towards the CBG because that's the next greatest thing. There's going to be other cannabinoids coming down the road, but those markets are going to, until the market stabilizes, it's going to be a whipsaw, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So not for the faint part.
I would caution anyone getting into wanting to grow hemp is that you have to develop your own business alongside. Growing hemp is, if say I'm going to go out there, I'm going to grow my acres, that's not enough. You need to do the legwork. You need to find, who's going to process it, who's going to sell your oil before you plant anything.
Yeah.
It's you have to have your whole chain in place. And like you said, Dave said there's people that had success. Well, those are the people that did, have their whole supply chain in place before they planted. And there's a lot of people that went out there and speculated and say, well, the processors will be there. Well, for a lot of people, the processors weren't there. But then once they got their oil, they thought, well, that I'll be able to move my oil. Well, then, you kind of have to have, you have to connect from your seed provider all the way to your retail distribution. If you don't know that, if you can't connect all the dots yourself, it's going to be a tough thing to get into. You have to be able to connect all the dots.
Mm-hmm. Good advice.
Yeah, I agree. Here at Mid-Michigan Hemp Supply, we try to help with that. We try to have an avenue for everything that everybody would need. If we don't offer it here, we generally know somebody who does. So we're trying to, help with all dynamics. Just like Eric said, you have to have the processors and your workers. There were so many people last year that didn't know they would need several hands per acre, so having the kinks all worked out and working with a company that's done it before. I'm not trying to give Mid-Michigan a hemp supply a huge spotlight, but one of our mottos is we know it because we grow it. So you got to find some people that have access to processors and to vendors and to CBD stores and to all that stuff. It takes someone to know someone, and sometimes it's not about what you know, it's about who you know.
Absolutely. We're kind of running out of time, Blaine. Why don't you talk a little bit about next week's show?
All right. Just going through the questions real quick to chat here. Okay, so there is, although Mike said he got a email or a notification of some kind that the money for the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, has been used up. I still would apply for that if you haven't yet, if that falls into your business. I'm sure they're going to be trying to put more money into that. I know they're talking about another 250 billion. I don't know if that's even enough, but anyway, so if you haven't done that, do that. There is some agricultural programs. One's called the WHIP, the Wildfire Hurricane Incentive Program, to help those that had those issues in 18 and 19. But they've also expanded it now for farmers that had prevent plant and also farmers that had a loss of yield. We'll cover that in a little more detail probably at the next iHemp hour that we do. If you have any questions, you can also get hold of me, and I'll put my email up here. In the meantime, I can do that. And we will put up the email or the website regarding the discussion with MSU Farm Bureau on the sales of plants, so everybody can kind of take that for themselves on that. I think we got to put a little logic into this myself. We got to eat next year. And what else we got? Don't forget, mark your calendars. We are progressing and making progress with the Hemp Expo that's going to be held January 22nd, 23rd, Lansing, at the Lansing Center. We've talked to the hotel. We're going to use the Radisson Hotel again, and we'll have more information on that as we move along. But just remember to mark your calendar for that. Should be another fun one for everybody, and we're going to have a lot of great speakers and a lot of great topics to cover at that. For the next meeting that we're going to have on the iHemp Hour, we're going to cover a couple of pretty interesting topics. The next thing, obviously, after you get all these plants and you get these seedlings, and now you got to put it in the ground. So the next one that we're going to cover is soil and health nutrients. Christy Apple, also known as Crop Star Christy, is going to be airing that, and she's been advising growers on the proper nutrition for all kinds of crops, fruit, grain, vegetables, hemp. So she's very knowledgeable. She did talk at our expo last year, so I think you'll find that to be very, very interesting. And then John McCloskey is going to also be joining us to share his knowledge on loss prevention. A common problem that a lot of growers had last year was theft. Jason's going to go into a little more depth too about how to protect your patent rights and your branding and those kind of things. So we're going to cover that a little bit. Maybe not the what do I want to say there? The patent, maybe not the patent stuff, but certainly your brand protection, internal theft, those kind of things that you need to think about as we grow these businesses. That's about what I got right now.